My name is Morgan Layton, 36 years old, and I used to live in a luxury apartment in the West Loop of Chicago. 2 years ago, I believed I was living in a real-life romantic dream. A stable career, six-figure income, supportive friends, and a man I thought would be my husband. Cole Harrington, founder of a well-known tech startup who had just sold his company for over $25 million. We met at a sustainable investment conference in Austin. Cole walked up to the refreshment table and asked if I was in line. I said no, and we started talking. He was the kind of man who made people turn their heads, not because of his looks, but because of how he made others feel seen. Calm, confident, and completely comfortable in his own skin. 3 weeks after that meeting, he invited me to dinner at a small Italian restaurant tucked away in an alley hardly anyone knew about. The night ended with a soft kiss under the early fall rain. I had never felt my heart race like that. After that evening, Cole became a part of my life. Weekend getaways to Napa Valley, a personalized bookshelf filled with titles he handpicked for me, even remembering I preferred my cold brew with almond milk. 14 months later, he got down on one knee atop the Peninsula Hotel rooftop, under candlelight and a bouquet of baby's breath. A sparkling 2-carat diamond ring sat inside a black velvet box. I cried, not because I was surprised, but because I finally felt chosen, truly loved. I said yes. He embraced me and whispered, "This is only the beginning." We planned to marry the following fall at a vineyard in Oregon, where my parents had honeymooned back in 1983. My mom nearly teared up when she heard the location. My dad began rehearsing his toast as if he were the keynote speaker at TEDx. It was the happiest time of my life, or at least, that's what I thought. There was just one thing I didn't expect. Ellie, my half-sister. 3 years younger than me, living in Denver where she worked in entertainment media. Since childhood, Ellie had always been the one who could draw attention. I used to share my toys, clothes, even friends with her, thinking, as the older sister, that's just what you do. But as we grew older, I realized some people don't see kindness as something to value. They see it as an opening to take. When I announced the engagement to my family, Ellie texted immediately. "Send me a pic of the ring. He's so handsome. Better hold on tight or I might steal him," followed by a winking emoji. I laughed, but something in me twisted. She always joked like that. I never thought she would actually cross the line. I asked Ellie to be my maid of honor, partly because my mom wanted us to grow closer, partly because I believed our childhood shouldn't define our future. I truly believed that. When I brought Cole to meet my family for the first dinner, Ellie wore a red backless dress, walking in like she was auditioning for a film. She chatted with Cole so much that my mom had to interrupt. "Ellie, let Morgan introduce the main course." Ellie just smiled, lightly touched Cole's shoulder, and said, "You're lucky, sis. I can see why he's your soulmate." I brushed it off, wanting to believe it was harmless. What I didn't know was, while I was picking out my wedding dress, another relationship, secretive and cruel, had already started to grow behind my back. 3 months before the wedding, I began to feel that something had changed. Not in the air, but in the man I once believed was my safe place. Cole started pulling away. Evenings we used to spend watching movies were now replaced with urgent investor meetings. His texts became short, his gaze distant, and the most chilling part, the deliberate silence. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was work pressure. Maybe he was tired. I bargained with reality like someone refusing to see the obvious. But the truth doesn't care how badly you want it to be something else. Eventually, it knocks anyway. One evening, after coming home from a cake tasting appointment, Cole had abruptly canceled, claiming he had to check out a wedding venue. I started gathering laundry. In the pocket of his leather jacket draped over the armchair, I found a deep wine-red lipstick by Charlotte Tilbury. That color wasn't mine. I don't wear red lipstick. I had told Cole that dozens of times. I stood frozen, fingers gripping it so tightly the brand name left a mark in my palm. That familiar chill crawled up my spine, my instincts screaming that something was deeply wrong. I didn't explode. I watched. I stayed silent and paid attention. And then the opportunity came. It was a Friday. Cole said he had a last-minute meeting at 6 p.m. with his attorney to finalize the prenup. I told him I'd stay home and work on the invitations. Instead, I went straight to the Selwyn, a boutique three-story hotel near the riverfront, the exact location from the video Carmen, my friend in hotel PR, had sent me days earlier. I had booked room 203, which faced the main entrance, 2 days in advance. I sat and waited, pretending to work on my laptop. At 8:12 p.m., they walked in. She was holding his hand. No shame, no hesitation. Ellie wore a form-fitting black satin dress and the pearl necklace my mother once gave her, the same one she had mocked as too old lady for anyone under 60. I didn't confront them. I didn't scream. I didn't let my heart do the talking. I filmed the moment on my phone, clear enough to capture the way Cole looked at Ellie like she was the only thing that mattered. That night, I left his apartment key on the kitchen counter along with a note. Is someone no longer worthy? Don't come back. I'm not there anymore. I moved back into my old apartment, cut all contact. But the cruelty didn't stop there. A week later, Ellie posted a photo on Instagram. Her hand, now wearing the diamond ring Cole once proposed to me with, rested on the rim of a champagne glass. The caption read, "When love finds the right person." I didn't like it. Didn't comment, but the post spread faster than I expected. Messages poured in. Some offered sympathy. Some asked if it was true. Some just sent 3 words, "I knew it." The betrayal from the 2 people I once loved most didn't destroy me, but it changed me forever. I was no longer the naive Morgan who believed every sweet word. No longer the older sister who thought sacrificing myself would keep peace in the family. From that rubble, I began rebuilding myself. This time, laying each brick with clarity and choice. It took me nearly 2 weeks to breathe like a human being again. Not to live, just to exist without crying at the sight of a champagne flute or hearing a Google Calendar alert that said, "Meet with wedding planner." Mornings became heavy. I stopped waking up on time, stopped going into the office, stopped caring about any presentation. When my boss called asking why I'd missed 2 major strategy meetings, I only said, "I need a few days off." But those few days turned into weeks. My sleep was erratic, my appetite gone, my mind spinning between rage and emptiness. One morning, I sat on the floor, back against my closet, staring at the wedding dress still zipped inside its garment bag. I opened it. I didn't know why I hadn't gotten rid of it yet. The feeling of insult and humiliation surged up, tightening my throat. I couldn't breathe. The door opened. My mom, Joan Layton, 62, in a beige cardigan, carrying a paper bag of hot soup, said nothing at first. She looked at me, sat down next to me, and pulled me into a hug. That's when I broke down, sobbing like a child abandoned in a snowstorm. She rubbed my back the way she used to when I fell off my bike at 8 years old. "You can hate him later," she said gently, "but right now, you need to stand up." She was the only one who didn't fuel the fire. She didn't curse Ellie, didn't demonize Cole. She focused solely on me. Every day, she came over, cooked my favorite meals, cleaned my apartment, scheduled an appointment with a therapist her friend recommended. And when I hesitated, she simply said, "Just sit and talk. You don't have to say much. She knows how to listen." In the 4th week after the shock. During the first few sessions, I barely spoke. But Dr. Hollis was patient. She didn't push. She only asked, "How is Morgan feeling today?" That simple question slowly pulled me out of the thick fog in my head. As for work, I knew I couldn't stay at my current company. After weeks of absence and missing a deal worth over $200,000, my boss called me in. He was firm but kind. "Morgan, I'm not blaming you, but I think we both know you need more time than we can offer." I nodded, no resistance. It was the first time I signed a resignation letter without a trace of regret. Unemployed, heartbroken, humiliated, I moved back in with my mom for a short time in Naperville, a suburb west of Chicago. Every morning she left a small handwritten note beside the coffee pot. In blue ink, "You survived what once felt impossible. I'm proud of you." Or, no need to do anything big today, just breathe deeply. I deleted social media. No photos, no following. I needed to disappear. But one day, after a grocery trip with Mom, she told me about a rehiring program at an ad agency her old friend used to work for. Just try it if you want, she said. I smiled faintly. But that evening, I opened my laptop, updated my resume, and sent it while sipping tea. 4 days later, they called back. I was stunned. A Zoom interview was scheduled for that weekend. The company, Vantage Axis, was based in Milwaukee but opening a new office in Lincoln Park, Chicago. I dressed neatly, added a little blush, and for the first time in weeks, I answered questions without trembling. 2 weeks after that, I got the email, offer from Vantage Axis, Lincoln Park. I got the job. The salary wasn't as high as before, but the role was flexible, regional communications supervisor with the task of building a new team. I said yes. I moved back to Chicago in mid-spring. My new apartment was smaller, but the windows faced the lake. No more elaborate furniture from my days with Cole. I bought a pale blue couch, hung a picture of my mom in the kitchen, and placed a small lavender plant by the window. I started again, from zero. Chicago didn't welcome me with sweet promises. The city met me with cold winds blowing down red brick streets, car horns echoing day and night, and just enough indifference to let me be a complete stranger. I needed that too, to disappear into the crowd, to be someone no one recognized, no one remembered, as the woman who almost became the fiancé of a cheater. But then, someone did recognize me. Not my past, just who I was in that moment. That day was a networking event hosted by Vantage Axis with some tech partners. I wasn't in the mood, but my department head said, just show up for 15 minutes, smile, and hold a drink. I reluctantly agreed, wearing a simple black dress, tying my hair up, and putting on heels for the first time in almost 3 months. I stepped into the second-floor restaurant of a boutique hotel, trying to find a graceful exit, when I heard a soft male voice behind me. You're counting the minutes too, aren't you? I turned. The man was tall, with slightly curled hair around his temples, wearing a gray suit but no tie. His eyes smiled before his mouth did, like he genuinely found the event dull but was politely enduring it. Was it that obvious? I replied with a smile, raising my mocktail. We should start a club for forced socializers, he said. Zane Foster. I froze a bit at the last name, but instinctively shook his hand. Morgan Layton. I heard your name in one of the recent internal presentations. Your analysis on user behavior was sharp. I raised an eyebrow. Where do you work? Co-founder of Elevate Partners. We're backing a few startups involved in your firm's media campaign. I'd heard of Elevate. It was one of the rising private equity funds in the Midwest tech scene, known for investing in early-stage, women-led startups. That made me nod, a little tension easing from my chest. That evening, Zane didn't try to make me laugh. He didn't tell jokes, didn't flirt clumsily, didn't glance at the empty space where a ring might have been. We just talked. About the industry, the market, the book Atomic Habits we were both halfway through. Afterward, Zane didn't text me at midnight. He sent an email, a real email, asking to grab coffee, whenever you feel like it. I agreed, not out of instant excitement, but curiosity. What kind of man still uses email to ask someone out in the age of emoji texting? The coffee lasted longer than expected. No awkward silences, no feeling of being studied. When I said I'd just moved from Naperville, Zane simply nodded and said, everyone has their reason to start over. I've done it too. Slowly, he became a steady presence in my otherwise packed schedule. Not there too often, but always at the right time. When I was drowning in deadlines, he left coffee at my office door. When I declined dinner due to stress, he sent a Spotify link, a playlist called Just Listen, Don't Think Too Much. I began to feel my heart respond. Not to grand gestures, but to the way he listened without interrupting, stayed patient without pressure. After 3 months, I agreed to dinner at his place. No restaurants, no fake jazz music, Just a small kitchen, the scent of fresh basil, and a plate of homemade carbonara. When I fell quiet in the middle of the meal, Zane simply asked, "You still thinking about him?" I nodded. Honestly. "That's okay," he said, resting his hand on the table without reaching for mine. "I'm not in a rush." I looked at the man in front of me. Not armored in flashy charm like Cole, not flaunting achievements, not trying to be someone he wasn't. He just sat there, a solid wall, steady, but never invasive. I don't know if this is love, but I know this. For the first time in months, I wasn't afraid to be hurt just because I opened up. And maybe that alone was the first step toward living honestly with my heart again. Zane and I got married on a fall afternoon at a small chapel by Lake Geneva, where maple leaves floated down like time itself had choreographed them. It wasn't a fairy tale wedding, no lavish tents, no crystal-covered roses, just 30 close friends and family, a custom 3-tier cake, and a man who looked at me like I was the only one left in the world. Zane didn't promise I'd never hurt again. Instead, he looked me straight in the eye and said, "I can't erase the past, but I'll be here whenever you need me, even when you won't admit that you do." After the wedding, we bought a 3-story townhouse in Bucktown, just a 10-minute walk from my new office. Zane kept growing, Elevate Partners, while I led the communications team at Vantage, where I'd just been promoted to regional director. Nothing came easy. We had arguments about work schedules, about having kids, especially after I was diagnosed with infertility. But not once did Zane abandon me in the middle of a storm. He always said, "Family doesn't begin with children. It begins the moment two people choose to keep going, no matter what map they're handed." We'd been going for almost 3 years when a phone call in the middle of a meeting brought everything to a halt. "The doctors found a tumor on the pancreas," my mom said, her voice trembling but trying to stay calm. "They're not sure if it's spread, but I thought you should know." I went numb. The very next day, Zane and I flew back to Illinois. After a series of tests, my mother was diagnosed with late-stage pancreatic cancer. There was no miracle treatment. We only had months left. I took extended leave, moved back into my childhood home, and spent all my time taking care of her. Zane rearranged his work so he could come to Naperville every weekend, bringing her favorite chicken sandwiches and loads of silly stories to make her laugh. In her final days, she didn't say much, but every word weighed as much as my entire childhood. "Don't live just to avoid getting hurt again. You deserve to be loved, not just protected." 3 months later, she passed away in her sleep, holding my hand. The funeral was held on a gray Saturday morning at St. Mark's Church. I didn't tell Ellie. We hadn't spoken in 6 years, except for one cold message she sent after hearing I was engaged. "Hope you'll be happy with someone who wasn't meant for me." I deleted it in under 10 seconds. But just as I was helping Dad adjust his tie in front of the mirror, the doorbell rang. Zane answered. I heard his voice say, "Hello, Morgan's in the living room getting ready." I turned and froze. Ellie. Still the same wavy blonde hair, still the pale blue eyes. But what shook me was her face, not polished like it used to be. Under the thin makeup was a weariness she couldn't hide. "I heard from Mrs. Karen next door," she said. "I'm sorry. I know I'm not welcome, but..." She was both our mom. My dad quietly stepped out, said nothing, but didn't stop her. Zane stood beside me, gently holding my hand. He didn't pull me away, just waited for my choice. I nodded. "Come in, but don't make a scene." "I'm here to say goodbye," Ellie replied. "That's all." During the service, I saw her sit in the very back row, head bowed, never looking up once. Nathan wasn't with her. Part of me was surprised. Another part didn't feel the need to care why. What I didn't expect was that after the service, Ellie quietly approached my father and said, "I'm sorry for everything. I hope you've been well." He looked at her, said nothing, just placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, like a father still learning how to accept the unforgivable. As Zane and I headed to the car, Ellie appeared beside me again, this time holding a small envelope. I know you might never read this, but I wrote it for Mom, and if you want to keep it, keep it. If not, you can throw it away. I took it, didn't promise anything. As the car rolled past the bare trees lining the road out of the cemetery, I stared out the window. I didn't feel the same rage as before. I hadn't forgiven. But somehow, some part of me no longer needed to hold on to that fury. I didn't expect to see Ellie again so soon after Mom's funeral, but 3 weeks later, I got an email from Dad. The church is holding a private memorial for your mom on Sunday afternoon. The family will be there. If you're free, stop by. I hesitated, but eventually decided to return to Naperville. Partly out of respect for Mom, partly because I needed to see what Ellie wanted. The service was held in a small chapel, quiet and dignified. Zane and I arrived early to help Dad set up the photo frame and arrange a few guest books. Everything felt calm, until Ellie walked in with Cole. He wore a charcoal suit, hair slicked back with gel, one hand lightly resting on Ellie's back like he was leading a press conference. She stood out in a deep-cut black gown, metallic stilettos, and a tiny Chanel clutch. "You haven't changed much," Ellie said, scanning me from head to toe. "Still going for that modest aesthetic, huh?" I smiled and stayed silent. Zane gave my hand a gentle squeeze as if to say, "Don't let her drag you into a cheap fight." But Ellie didn't stop. "Chicago seems to suit you. I see you've kept your figure. Though it must be lonely living alone. 38 and still no kids, no real stability. Meanwhile, she glanced at Cole meaningfully, just bought our second vacation home in Santa Barbara. Private beach and all." Cole stayed silent, but there was something off in his eyes. Not the usual polished gleam. I lifted my head and smiled. "Sounds like you're doing really well. Is he still investing in tech?" "Oh, of course," Ellie jumped in. "Just backed a new digital education platform last month. And we recently signed a consulting deal with a healthcare startup." That's when Zane stepped up beside me and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Like perfect timing. I turned to him and smiled. "You haven't met my husband yet, right? Let me introduce you. This is Zane Foster, co-founder of Elevate Partners." Both Ellie and Cole froze. Cole squinted, mouth opening like he was about to say something, then closed again. His expression shifted. He no longer looked like the confident man who walked in, but someone who just saw a past he didn't dare confront. Zane gave a courteous nod. "Cole, been a while." I glanced over, lips curling slightly. "Oh, you two know each other?" Zane replied evenly. "Yeah, about 7 years ago when I invested in Mediatron and he went with Streamwell. Mediatron was eventually acquired by Amazon. Streamwell, I believe it got sued for financial fraud, didn't it?" Cole didn't respond right away. His jaw visibly clenched. Ellie rolled her eyes and lifted her chin. "Well, everyone has their own path." Zane smiled politely. "Of course. Still, it's nice to run into an old rival in such a peaceful setting." I turned to Ellie. "I don't need a beach house. I have a man who doesn't need to prove his worth with assets and who knows when to step back so I can step forward. You, on the other hand, are still using the same formula from 6 years ago." She flushed red. I said nothing else. Didn't need to. What I once craved, recognition, validation, proving I was better than her, meant nothing to me now. On our way out, I spotted Cole standing alone in the church courtyard, talking on the phone. Zane walked over, not to interrupt, just quietly said, "Doesn't know you already know everything. But I think today you showed them that the real sting isn't betrayal. It's watching someone you look down on thrive, without ever stooping to revenge." I nodded, eyes drifting toward Ellie, whisper fighting with Cole by the flower fence. I didn't feel triumphant, just light. I thought everything had closed when the memorial ended. Zane and I returned to Chicago early the next morning, feeling light, like we had just shut an old door. I didn't think Ellie would reach out again. But then, 2 weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. Just 3 words. So sorry. I knew it was her. A few minutes later, a second message came. Can I have 10 minutes? Rosie's Cafe, Saturday. I'll understand if you don't come. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but there was something in her tone, not flowery, not fake, that made me feel I should listen. That Saturday afternoon, I went to Rosie's, a small, vintage-style coffee shop with round windows and oak tables. Ellie was already seated in the corner, wearing a gray sweater and jeans, her makeup lighter than usual. She looked thinner, her jaw more pronounced, puffy eyes clearly visible. She stood up when she saw me, seemed like she wanted to hug me but only nodded. Thank you for coming, she said. I sat down. What do you want to say? Ellie gripped her cappuccino tightly, eyes lowered. Goal's not the man I thought I took from you. He changed quickly. Or maybe I never really knew him. I stayed silent. After the wedding, we bought a house way beyond our means. He pulled money from everywhere, investing in risky deals, and whenever he lost it all, he blamed me. Because you made me buy that ring, because you want to live like the elite. He controlled everything. Credit cards, email passwords, even my hair appointment schedule. If I didn't answer the phone in 3 minutes, he'd rage. Once he yelled at me at a charity dinner because I complimented a dish the waiter recommended. I clenched the handle of my cup, not from shock, but from seeing a terrifying reflection of myself years ago. For the first time, I understood what it feels like to be scared in your own home, she continued, voice lowering. I used to think you were weak for crying over him, but now I know that was strength, because you had the courage to leave. I looked at her. For the first time, Ellie's eyes held no defiance, no comparison, just exhaustion. And something that looked very much like regret. I've filed for divorce, she said, but there's one thing I need to do before I submit it. I frowned. I want to say I'm sorry, truly, for stealing something I thought was a prize. I didn't just betray you, I betrayed the trust you once gave me. Wind blew against the cafe windows, fluttering the curtain. Jazz music played softly, like any other afternoon. But time seemed to pause between us. I set my hand on the table, not touching her, but I said, you don't need to apologize for being unhappy, but you do need to apologize for knowing exactly what you were doing and doing it anyway. Ellie nodded, her eyes welling up. I know. I'm not promising forgiveness, I said plainly. That wound doesn't heal easily, but I won't hate you anymore. That's enough. She let out a soft laugh, half tears. That's more than enough. Before leaving, she pulled a small, fabric-wrapped box from her purse. Remember the ceramic hair clip Mom gave you when you got into college? The Japanese one you loved. I stole it years ago, just out of jealousy. I've kept it all this time, but now I want to return it. I took the box, my chest tightening. I remembered the morning I searched the whole house, thinking I lost it somewhere on the street. I said nothing, just nodded. As Ellie walked away, her figure shrank in the golden light. She was no longer the woman who once strutted into my engagement party full of pride, but someone peeling off the masks she'd worn for so long. I didn't know if she could start over. But for the first time, I saw the real Ellie. No performance, no resentment, just a broken woman trying to piece herself back together. And I, Morgan Layton, realized that some truths aren't corrected with words, but through quiet action, over time. The first winter after my mother's funeral passed in quiet gentleness. I spent many weekend afternoons just staying in, brewing chamomile tea, playing instrumental music, and rereading pages from the notebook she left behind. Some days the grief was so heavy it took my breath away, but instead of running from it, I learned to sit with it, like an old friend, unavoidable, but no longer feared. Zane always knew when to stay quiet and when to speak. One night, as I finished the dishes, he walked over, hugged me from behind, and whispered, I know you don't say it, but your mom must be so proud. I didn't answer. I just leaned my head on his shoulder, a strange calm washing over me. Around early March, I noticed something felt different. Maybe it was work, maybe the weather, but I was more tired than usual, barely eating, and constantly nauseous. Zane suggested a pregnancy test, and I nearly laughed. We had tried for a year, with every doctor, every test, every cycle of hope and heartbreak, until we were drained. When all efforts only led to exhaustion, we chose to stop. Not to give up, but to accept. Happiness didn't have to come in one particular shape. But that morning, when the two lines appeared on the test, I stood frozen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just held it tightly in my hand, afraid that letting go might make it vanish. Zane found me sitting on the bathroom floor, shaking, unable to speak. He knelt, looked at me, and softly asked, "Is it?" I nodded, laughing through tears. "I think we're about to start a new adventure." The news of pregnancy came like a gift from the universe, unannounced, unexplainable, but deeply meaningful. And strangely, I wasn't afraid. I didn't feel the need to brace myself against hurt. For the first time, I wanted to soften, to believe something good was coming. I told my father, and he cried. For the first time since Mom passed, he didn't try to hide it. "He must be jumping for joy up there," he said, voice trembling. I also sent a short message to Ellie. "What would you say if I told you I'm going to be a mom?" She called immediately, voice choked. "Are you serious?" "Yes, and this child, I believe, will never grow up under the shadow of comparison or resentment like we did." Ellie was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I'm happy for you. You've deserved happiness for a long time." We weren't close again, but we learned to listen. Sometimes she'd call asking about small things, which blender to buy, or whether to take a job at a smaller but more meaningful firm. Each time, the space between us grew just a little smaller. In June, Zane and I moved into our new home in Evanston, a small vintage house with a backyard wide enough for lavender and a few tomato beds. The nursery was painted a pale yellow, with a sunlit window and a rocking chair I placed near the bookshelf. I planned to read to our baby every night, starting with Where the Wild Things Are, the same book my mother read to me when I was sad. One afternoon, as I was folding baby clothes, Zane walked in and wrapped his arms around me like always. He whispered, "We've come a long way." I looked at him and smiled. From first heartbreak to grown-up love, from a canceled wedding to a new calling. I was no longer the Morgan who collapsed in the bathroom after seeing her fiancé and sister betray her. I was no longer the woman constantly trying to please everyone. Now as a mother-to-be, a wife loved the right way, and a woman who had learned that sometimes pain isn't the end, but the beginning of a journey to rediscover yourself through growth and grace. Morgan's story is proof that sometimes the deepest wounds open the door to the strongest rebirths. In real life, any of us can stumble because of betrayal, loss, or the mistakes of loved ones, but it's how we rise, face the pain, and rebuild our lives based on what we believe is right that truly defines us. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means letting go so we can move forward, freer, more at peace, and more deserving. What do you think about Morgan's journey and how she overcame the hurt caused by her family? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family, forgiveness, and the strength of self.